My beloved sisters and brothers, let me tell you something old as the oceans and yet new every morning, something humble yet holy, something you pass on your kitchen table, but God passes through his eternal hand. Salt. Salt, my dear, is more than seasoning. It's more than something to flavor your grits or wake up your greens. Salt is power. Salt is preservation. Salt is truth. Salt is survival. Now, I don't know what kind of storms you've walked through lately. Maybe your heart's been heavy with sorrow. Maybe your back's been bent under burdens. Maybe you've cried until your pillow knew your tears better than your friends did. But hear me now. Even in those moments, God was sprinkling salt on your soul, because salt, in its essence, does what the righteous do. It preserves what's worth saving and burns away what must be cleansed. Do you remember what Jesus said? Oh, yes, he said. You are the salt of the earth. Not the sugar, not the spice, not the honey, he said salt. Because sugar melts, but salt holds on. Salt stays when the fire gets hot. Salt endures. You see, salt doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. You don't need a platform, baby. You don't need applause. Just be the steadied. Be faithful. Be what God called you to be. My dear heart, let me sit with you a while and speak plainly yet poetically about something so simple, so small yet profoundly mighty. Salt, not the kind you toss casually over your shoulder or stir into soup without a second thought. No, beloved, I'm talking about the salt deep inside you. The seasoning of your spirit, the strength that has kept you upright when life tried to fold you in two. You see, salt is quiet. Salt does not demand applause. Salt does not need to shout to prove it's there. But let it be missing, and the whole dish falls flat. Let it be absent, and you'll taste the lack in every bite. Salt is strength in silence. It's the power of endurance, the power of presence. And that, my dear, is how you were created. You were not fashioned in weakness. You were not spoken to being by mistake. No, no. The God of glory shaped you with intention. He reached into the earth and pulled forth not just a body, but a soul seasoned with power. You were salted with grace. You were salted with wisdom. You were salted with strength that even time cannot tarnish. Life will test that strength. Life, with its storms and shadows, its betrayals and heartbreaks, its mountains and its valleys. Life will try to unseason you. It will try to water you down, make you forget who you are. But salt, my dear, is resilient. It may dissolve in the pot, but its presence is never lost. That's who you are. The heat of life may rise. The pressure may build. But like salt in boiling water, you remain, changing everything around you without losing the essence of who you are. There were days, yes, I know, when you wanted to give up, when the weight was too much, when the grief was too loud, when the pain wouldn't go away. But salt doesn't give up. Salt endures. Salt holds on. Salt stays, and so did you. Let the world praise the sugar, the shiny, the sweet. But give me the salt of a soul that has survived. Give me the salt of a woman who has cried herself to sleep and still risen to sing in the morning. Give me the salt of a man who has been broken and bruised, but not bowed. That, my love, is the kind of strength you carry. A strength not born of circumstance, but of spirit. A strength that came with your breath, came with your birth, came from the divine. And I must tell you, salt is not only strong, salt is sacred. In ancient days, when people made a covenant, an unbreakable bond, they sealed it with salt, not with gold, not with silver, but salt. Why? Because salt lasts, salt endures, salt does not spoil, and when God placed his hand on your life, he seasoned you with that same covenant. A promise that you are not alone, a promise that what he placed in you will not decay. You were not made to crumble, you were made to preserve, so when you walk through fire, remember this. Salt doesn't burn. When the winds howl and the rain falls, remember this. Salt does not wash away. You may be shaken, you may be bent, but you will not be undone. Because the power of salt is in its staying, in its keeping, in its quiet strength that transforms without boasting. Some people look for strength in loud voices, clenched fists, or heavy steps. But strength is also in the gentle, in the consistent, in the humble. Strength is in the woman who keeps praying when no one's listening. Strength is in the father who stays when it's easier to run. Strength is in the soul who forgives again and again and again. And that is salt you. And you were seasoned by your struggles. You were strengthened by your storms. You were sanctified by your scars. Don't you ever be ashamed of them. The salt in you came through the crushing, came through the pressing, came through the heat. But it remains. And it remains powerful. When people say you've changed them, when they say your presence lifted them, helped them, healed them, they are tasting the salt in your soul. They are experiencing the quiet, holy power of a spirit seasoned by God himself. So stand tall, child, walk boldly, love deeply. You don't have to yell. You don't have to demand. Just be what you are. Just live in your truth. Just let your soul do what salt does. Preserve what is holy, heal what is hurting, and flavor this world with the grace of God. And when the world gets loud, when fear knocks at your door, when doubt whispers lies in your ear, remember this. Salt doesn't lose its strength just because the heat rises. In fact, that's when its power shows. So I say to Yug, stay salty, child. Stay seasoned. Stay strong, not with fists clenched, but with your soul grounded, with your heart rooted, with your spirit lifted. Because when God said, you are the salt of the earth, he meant you. In your silence, in your sorrow, in your strength, in your stillness, you are not just enough. You are essential, you are powerful. You are salt, and salt, my dear, is holy. Let me whisper to your soul, child, about something so small yet so sacred. Salts, again, this simple mineral that dances across your dinner plate, that seasons your soup, that's tucked away in your grandmother's cupboard like a quiet guardian. It is more than flavor. It is more than function. Salt preserves. It keeps what matters. It saves what should not be lost. You see, before there were freezers, before there were plastic wraps and shiny machines humming in kitchens, there was salt. When the world was simpler, when folks lived close to the land and worked with their hands, they knew that salt was a gift from God. It kept the fish from spoiling. It kept the meat from rotting. It kept the food from dying before it reached the table. And just as it preserved the food, it now preserves your soul. You've got salt in your spirit. Yes, you do. The kind that keeps goodness from fading away. The kind that holds truth together when lies try to rot the foundation. The kind that keeps love alive even after it's been bruised and battered. Because, my dear, this world, this beautiful, aching world, has a way of decaying the best parts of us. It whispers to us to let go of our hope, to stop believing in what's good and right, to discard what no longer serves the noise. But salt is different. Salt stands still. Salt protects. Salt says, not on my watch. There is preservation power in your presence. You may not even know it. You may not see it when you look in the mirror or when you stumble out of bed with burdens clinging to your back like shadows. But there is someone who has not fallen apart because you stood strong. Someone who has not lost their mind because your words came like a balm. Someone who has not walked away from God because your life reminded them he's still near. Salt does that. It saves the things that matter. It fights against the slow, silent death of purpose. It arrests the decay of joy. It is an invisible guardian, just as you are. You are holding families together with your faith. You are holding communities together with your compassion. You are holding generations together with your prayers. And though nobody may stop to thank you, though no one may ever say your name from a stage, you are doing holy work. You are preserving. Even in the sacred scriptures we find the truth of salt's power. Lot's wife, bless her, was turned into a pillar of salt, not as punishment alone, but as a symbol that some things must be remembered. Some moments must be preserved as warnings, as signs, as reminders. Because there is danger in forgetting. There is danger in letting the sacred become common, in letting righteousness spoil under the heat of corruption. Salt doesn't just save. It remembers. It marks a moment and keeps it from being erased by time. You, my love, are preserving memory. You are holding on to values that the world says are outdated. You're clinging to integrity in a time of convenience. You're raising your children not just with rules, but with reverence. You're teaching them not just how to survive, but how to live with dignity. That is salt. That is preservation. Some folks think preservation is about standing still. Oh no. Oh no. Preservation is about fighting. Fighting to keep what's worth saving. It is active. It is intentional. It is brave. It is choosing day after day not to give up on what God called good. It is choosing to love when bitterness would be easier. It is choosing to show up when silence would be safer. It is choosing to remember that even when the world forgets your name, heaven remembers your impact. And let me tell you, child, when you walk into a room filled with confusion and bring peace, you're preserving. When you stop the gossip with wisdom, you're preserving. When you pray for the one who hurt you, yes, Lord, you're preserving. When you give mercy instead of revenge, you are putting salt on that wound to keep it from getting infected with hate. That is no small thing. You were born into a generation that throws things away. Relationships, promises, people. But salt doesn't let go so easily. Salt holds on. Salt keeps the sacred sacred. Salt says, this matters. This is worth saving. You are salt when you write your truth in a journal so your children's children will one day know who you were. You are salt when you sing the songs your grandmother sang while she stirred the pot and wiped her brow. You are salt when you forgive, when you create, when you protect, when you stand. So never let this world tell you that your soft work is not strong. Preservation is not weakness. Salt doesn't shout, but it saves. Salt doesn't sparkle, but it serves. Salt doesn't wear a crown, but it upholds the kingdom. And remember, my dear, it's not always the loud that makes the biggest impact. It's the faithful, the consistent, the ones who preserve the presence of God in everyday life. You do that when you love with grace, when you lead with humility, when you choose truth over trend. Salt doesn't apologize for being necessary. And neither should you. You were given this role not by man, but by the Master, the one who knows how easily this world forgets what matters. So he sprinkled you into it, not to blend in, but to bless, to preserve joy, to preserve hope, to preserve the beauty of life lived in faith. So go on and be the salt, be the one who remembers, be the one who keeps holding, be the one who stands in the face of decay and says, not today. Because you are not just a bystander in this world. You are its seasoning. You are its strength. You are its preserver. You are salt. And that, my dear heart, is holy. There is something sacred about touch. Not just the kind that reaches out with fingers, but the kind that seasons every soul it meets. Salt has a way of elevating everything it graces. It brings out flavor, yes, but more than that, it reveals essence. It pulls forth the beauty already hidden inside the thing. That is the blessing of salt. It does not try to replace. It does not try to overshadow. It only tries to highlight what's already there. You too have this sacred calling. You, my dear, are made to season the earth with your presence. You walk into rooms heavy with sorrow, and somehow laughter returns. You open your mouth and truth falls like pearls. Tender but sharp, soft but strong. You do not force your way into spaces. You are like salt, quiet, almost invisible, but unforgettable. There are some people who leave a fragrance when they go, but the people who carry salt leave wisdom, nourishment, and soul. When God called you salt, he wasn't speaking of your tang. He was speaking of your purpose, to bring out goodness in the world, to give meaning to moments, to help a broken world taste and see that the Lord is still good. Salt never asks the food to change. It only adds to it. It lifts what is bland. It enlivens what is dull. That's the power of seasoning. It brings life to life. So when you season the world, you're not just being nice. You are being divine. You are living the way salt lives. You are bringing out the best in others, not by pushing them or preaching at them, but by living so fully in your truth that they begin to remember their own. You see, a seasoned soul doesn't crave attention. It craves impact. And child, let me tell you this, there's no power in just looking pretty. The power is in being useful. A life well lived is a life that seasons everything it touches. A life that leaves people better than it found them. A life that is kind, not for applause, but because kindness is a legacy that can't be buried. When you choose compassion, when you choose courage, when you choose to see people not as problems but as purpose, you are being salt. You are seasoning. You are adding value. That's what this world needs, nor noise. Not more fame, but more seasoning. More souls that walk slowly and love deeply. More souls that speak truth, even when it trembles in their throats. More souls that remind the world of grace. And isn't that just like salt? To be small, to be unnoticed, but to make the whole dish sing. Let them call you too quiet. Let them call you too old-fashioned, too gentle, too spiritual. They don't understand that salt doesn't brag. It just blesses. It does its work and slips away. It changes everything without demanding anything in return. Sometimes seasoning doesn't mean saying anything. It means standing there with a soft presence, eyes full of empathy, spirit full of God. It means holding someone's hand without needing a thank you. It means speaking a word in due season, not to impress but to heal. Your salt is your spirit, and oh, how needed that spirit is. When your child comes home heavy with the burdens of a cruel world, and you listen with your whole heart. Seasoning. When your partner has lost their way, and instead of criticism you offer patience and prayer. Seasoning. When your co-worker snaps, and instead of snapping back you respond with a silence full of strength. Seasoning. When you go into the store, and you smile at the cashier who's been mistreated all day. Seasoning. When you go to church, not to be seen but to serve. Seasoning. It's in your walk, in your words, in the way you carry grief with dignity, joy with humility, and truth with tenderness. That is seasoning. Let me tell you, child, God has placed you exactly where you are, not by accident but by assignment. You are in that family, on that job, in that neighborhood, in that body, not to just take up space, but to season it, to lift it, to love it, to show it what it means to be touched by salt. But hear me now. Salt loses its power when it forgets its purpose. And so do we. Don't let bitterness steal your seasoning. Don't let resentment dull your shine. Don't let fear tell you that you don't matter. You do. You were made to bring flavor, to bring faith, to bring fire where the world has gone cold. Salt never apologizes for being salt. It doesn't say, "I'm sorry for being essential." It simply shows up. It simply does what it was created to do. That's your job too. Show up. Speak love where there is hate. Speak peace where there is war. Be the one who doesn't just go with the crowd, but seasons the crowd with higher standards. Be the one who doesn't just quote scripture, but lives it. You don't have to be perfect to be powerful. Salt doesn't need perfection. It needs presence. Just be there with your whole heart. Be there, bringing the essence of heaven into every moment. Even when they don't notice you, keep seasoning. Even when they take you for granted, keep seasoning. Even when they try to water you down, keep seasoning. Because when the Lord made you salt, He knew the world would need what only you could bring. Your insight, your love, your stillness, your fire. So don't hide your seasoning. Don't play small. Don't shrink to fit inside anyone's fear. You were made to preserve and to bless. You were made to lift and to illuminate. You were made to season the earth with the grace of God that lives inside you. And when your time here is done, may the world say of Yug, she walked softly but carried strength. She didn't need to be loud. She just needed to be present. She brought light. She brought love. She brought salt. There are moments in life when all seems lost, when the well has run dry, when the doors have been locked, when your name is forgotten and your prayers feel unanswered, And in those moments, a quiet question rises from the deep. How can I go on? It is in such moments, child, when we learn the preserving power of salt. Salt doesn't just season. It doesn't only make things taste better. Salt preserves. It keeps what should have spoiled. It protects what should have perished. It holds together what time and trouble try to tear apart. And that, my dear, is a miracle in itself. See, when life hands you bitterness, pain, and sorrow, you can become bitter yourself. Or you can become salt, something that holds on to what matters, something that keeps the spirit alive, even when the body is tired. Salt reminds us that faith doesn't always shout from mountaintops. Sometimes it whispers in the valley. I'm still here. That's what you do when you preserve. You stand firm. You stay faithful. You choose to love when hatred seems easier. You choose to hope when giving up seems justified. You choose to carry your grandmother's wisdom, your mother's prayer, your father's strength, because the world needs what they gave you. You are the keeper of sacred things. There was a time when black folks weren't allowed to read the Bible, and still they remembered the verses. They kept them hidden in their hearts like salt in a pouch. They hummed the hymns beneath their breath in cotton fields. They rocked babies to sleep with songs of Zion, and somehow, even through chains and lashes, lynchings and losses, they preserved the faith. Now, child, if they could preserve joy under that weight, surely we can carry hope in ours. Preserving doesn't mean pretending. It doesn't mean you don't hurt. It doesn't mean you don't cry. It means you don't let that pain make you bitter. You don't let it make you blind to beauty. You rise even when the rising is slow and your knees are sore. You rise and you bring the recipe with you. How to endure, how to forgive, how to keep your soul intact when the world tries to unravel it. That's what our ancestors did. And that's what you can do. Because when you preserve, you are saying to the enemy, you may touch my body, but not my spirit. You may shake my house, but you won't take my faith. You may try to spoil what God has built, but I've been salted with divine strength. Salt preserves by soaking in. It doesn't sit on the surface. It doesn't do its work from a distance. It must enter in to keep the rot away. Likewise, your love, your wisdom, your presence. It must enter into people's lives to preserve them, not to control them, but to keep their dignity intact, to remind them of who they are, to say, I see you, and I will not let you rot in your sorrow. Think of the mothers who sit by hospital beds, praying without ceasing. Think of the grandfathers who tell old stories not to brag, but to preserve history. Think of the teachers who spend their own money on books just to light a fire in one child's mind. Think of the neighbor who leaves a plate on the porch. Think of the women who cook for repasts, not for thanks, but to help a grieving family eat and remember they're still alive. That's preservation. Salt doesn't keep things as they are. It keeps them from dying before their time. That's the work of every soul that chooses light over darkness. When you call someone just to check in, when you forgive even though the wound still stings, when you make something out of nothing, soup from scraps, joy from brokenness, hope from silence, you are preserving. This moment matters. This love matters. This life matters. A preservation is an act of resistance. You resist the urge to numb yourself. You resist the pressure to hate. You resist the world's shallow rush by choosing the deep and the eternal. You say, no, I will not discard what is holy just because it's hard. I will not throw away what is sacred just because it's old. I will preserve it, hold it close, keep it tender even as the years pass, because the world will try to make you forget. It will try to make you forget the songs your grandmother sang while shelling peas on the porch. It will try to make you forget the prayers whispered through tears on the midnight floor. It will try to make you forget the power of being kind when cruelty is trending. But salt, child, remembers. It remembers the goodness. It remembers the struggle. It remembers the God who never left. And so do you. Every time you write that poem, you are preserving. Every time you speak the truth in love, you are preserving. Every time you show up when it's easier to stay away, you are preserving. Every time you pass on wisdom to the next generation, you are preserving. And Lord knows this world needs preservation. Not just of our stories, but of our spirits. Not just of our culture, but of our courage. Not just of our past, but of our purpose. So don't you get weary in well-doing. The salt you carry is ancient and powerful. It comes from those who came before, and it will bless those who come after. You are a vessel of memory. You are a guardian of grace. You are salt. Child, you are salt, and salt knows how to keep what the world would otherwise waste. There comes a time in each life when we must rise above the simple and reach for the sacred. Not just in what we say, but in how we live. Salt, sweet child, was never meant only for flavor. Salt was meant for covenant, for connection, for remembrance, for binding what is holy to what is human. In the old times, the truly old times, salt was used not just for the body, but for the soul. It was used in offerings. It was used in prayers. It was used to seal agreements not with ink, but with trust. When God made a covenant, there was salt. Not because he needed seasoning, but because he wanted to remind us this bond shall endure. Yes, salt is the keeper of covenant. It is steadfast. It does not change with the seasons. It doesn't waver when the winds blow. It stands firm and resolute. So too must we stand in our covenant with God, with ourselves, and with one another. You see, when you give your heart to the Lord, it is not a transaction. It is not a bargain. It is not a quick promise whispered on Sunday morning and forgotten by Monday night. No, child, it is a covenant. It is sealed not with applause, but with tears, not with thunder, but with trust. You walk through fire. You climb over valleys. You lose some things along the way, but you stay with him because he never left you. Just like salt never leaves a meal unchanged, God's covenant never leaves a soul untouched. He promised he would never forsake us. Not in the flood, not in the famine, not when we fail, not when we fall. And if God can honor his covenant with us, shouldn't we strive to honor our covenant with him? A covenant is not convenience. It is not always easy, and it is rarely glamorous. It is work. It is love clothed in sweat. It is prayer uttered in doubt. It is grace offered when you feel empty. But child, that's the kind of love that lasts. Salt was also used in ancient rituals to show purity. When they offered sacrifices, they didn't just bring grain or oil or incense. They brought salt. Why? Because salt meant this was a holy offering. This wasn't for show. This one for status. This was sacred. And so I ask you, what are you offering to the Lord today? Is it salted with sincerity? Is it pure of motive? Is it real? Or are you offering half of yourself, expecting the fullness of God in return? The covenant of salt reminds us to live with integrity, not perfection, child. No, we'll never be perfect, but we can be honest. We can be faithful. We can show up when it's hard. We can keep our word. We can forgive even when we've been wronged. We can love even when the world tells us not to. That's covenant living. That's what it means to have salt in your spirit. See, when Jesus called us the salt of the earth, he wasn't just giving a compliment. He was giving a commission. He was saying, you are meant to preserve what is good. You are meant to flavor the world with grace. And you are meant to keep covenant when others have forgotten how. You don't just go to church. You become the church. You don't just read the word. You live the word. You don't just say grace. You give grace. Because a salted soul cannot be shaken. Oh, but hear me, beloved, for even salt can lose its savor. Even the most committed can grow cold. Even the most faithful can forget. That's why we stay close to the source. We read his word not out of duty, but out of desire. We pray not to impress, but to connect. We love not because we must, but because we've been loved first. And that love is the salt in our covenant. Salt was also a sign of loyalty in the ancient world. To eat salt with someone meant you shared peace. You shared trust. You were bound not by law, but by honor. That is what God wants from us. Not empty rituals, not hollow praise, but hearts that walk with Him, not just when it's easy, but when it's hardest. Child, covenant means you don't walk away when it gets tough. Covenant means you don't praise Him only in the palace. You praise Him in the prison, too. Covenant means you don't serve only when people are watching. You serve when nobody sees but God. Covenant means you don't pick up the cross just on Sundays. You carry it every day because He carried it for you. Salt can sting when placed on a wound, but it also heals. Likewise, covenant requires sacrifice. It burns sometimes. It humbles us. It breaks our pride. But it also restores what sin tried to destroy. It makes us new. It binds us back together with the one who made us. So when life grows bitter, add salt. When your relationships are crumbling, add salt. When your spirit is weary, add salt. And I don't mean the kind from the table. I mean the kind that lives in your soul. The kind that says, I remember who I am. I remember whose I am. I remember the covenant, and I will not walk away, because you, beloved, are a child of covenant. You were bought not with silver, not with gold, but with love, sweat, blood, and tears. God has salted your path with mercy. He has seasoned your journey with grace, and He has preserved your purpose, even when you couldn't see it. So walk forward now, not in fear, but in faith. Let your words be seasoned. Let your hands be healing. Let your steps be steadfast. And when the world asks who you are, say this with boldness. I am the salt of the earth. I am a keeper of the covenant. I am a living witness of God's enduring love. For you are salt, child, and salt doesn't spoil. Salt endures.